So with that, let me just start officially the interview by saying we're talking to Sergio Rodriguez.
Mhm.
And Sergio are you the CEO of
Correct. Yeah,
ToDoolie?
founder and CEO of ToDoolie.
Okay. And there are other key people on the team. Who are the other key team members?
Correct. So we're currently actually a team of six, and I'm the co-founder and CEO. I started the company with two co-founders, Jose Romo Puerta, who is a student recruitment person, and Armando Arteaga, who is our tech lead. He did computer science at Wayne State. Jose did business at Wayne State. And we just recently hired three more employees. So we have a VP of operations, we have a full stack developer, and we also have a backend developer.
So you have six full-time people.
Correct. Six full time and three part time.
Okay. So tell us in a nutshell, what does ToDoolie do?
Yeah. So ToDoolie is the easiest way to hire local students for help with outdoor tasks. But our mission is a dual mission. So our mission is one side of that mission is to provide professional development opportunities for young people, regardless of socioeconomic status or background. And then the second part of that mission is to bring neighborhoods, essential needs, and services online in a cost-effective way. So that's the dual mission that we have.
Mm-hmm.
Anything that we do needs to fall in line with that dual mission.
So you really would think of yourselves as having two customer segments, or would you consider the students you're working with? How do you consider them? Are they customers as well?
Yeah,
partners, employees.
We consider them our customers. We provide a service for them as well as we provide a service for our homeowners. We are what you call a marketplace. So it's a two-sided market. There are two sides.
Yeah.
There's a supply side and a demand side. If you look at the Uber and Lyft model, the supply side is the drivers. The demand side, of course, is the consumers. We consider our supply to be student labor and our demand to be homeowners.
Yeah. Okay. And if you could take a few minutes and just give us a sketch of your own, your personal background.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was born in Chile, in South America. I moved to the United States when I was 12 years old in 2004. I was brought here by my parents. My father got a job working for the NIH at the Perinatology Research Branch. And I was raised, half in South America, half in the United States. Some people argue that the most formative years of your life are really your teens. And I spent those years in the States. So although, I have a nice thick South American accent, I'm very much, very assimilated to the American culture. And, my closest friends are here. My girlfriend is actually at University of Michigan Medical School. So, obviously have a lot of love for Wolverines for that reason, many other reasons. But yeah, so born in Chile, moved to the States because I didn't grow up with a lot of means. I always felt guilty asking my parents for money. So at 12 years old, I began knocking on doors and doing odd jobs in my neighborhood. And at 16, I bought my first car. It was a $4,000 GMC Jimmy, and I was one of the first sophomores to have a car. I bought it with my own money, from my own, sweat and tears, doing yard work. And then when I went to college, I went to Wayne State, got a degree in biomedical physics. As an immigrant, I didn't qualify for FAFSA or financial aid. So I paid my way through college doing yard work for my neighbors, and I graduated debt-free. So ToDoolie is really an evolution of my personal experience. I was originally planning to go to medical school. My background is in healthcare and global health. So, this pandemic, everything that's going on is very personal to me. I ran a chapter for a nonprofit in college. So I had some organizational experience and leadership experience before I started ToDoolie. But really, ToDoolie is just, me realizing that this was a massive problem. I'm sure I'm not the only person who has to work while going to school, and realizing there was a market opportunity here that we could capitalize on.
Mm-hmm. So I remember meeting you at Wayne State, and I remember also you were a participant in that TechTown Student Accelerator. Is that where ToDoolie was born?
So actually, I need to give credit where credit is due. So DTX, TechTown helped me tremendously. However, ToDoolie was born out of my girlfriend telling me, Sergio, we've been dating for 2 years. Now we're going strong into 5 years. But at the time, it had been 2 years. And she said, Sergio, since we've been dating, you won't shut up about this app idea. That's all you talk about. So she said, before you go to medical school, why not take the summer off or take a gap year and give it a try? So at the time, my girlfriend was running an incubator at Wayne State called Optimize Wayne. And she needed participants. So she kind of pressured me a little bit to join her incubator and said, you have this idea, give it a try. So I started ToDoolie in April of 2017 through Optimize Wayne. And then once I went through Optimize Wayne, I was awarded a little bit of funding. It wasn't a lot, but it was $2,000. So I felt pressure like, okay, now this is real. I got to do something. And that's when I applied to the DTX program. So as an immigrant and an F1 visa, I couldn't legally own a business that I work for. I couldn't be self-employed. So I went to TechTown and I talked to Ned Stabler and I said, hey, Ned, I want to do this business, but I can't do it, as a self-employed person. Will you give me a job? So Ned actually hired me as the program manager for Ask an Expert. And I went through their accelerator program while employed for Wayne State University. And that's how I got through DTX.
Okay. What is it that motivated you? You talked about, this how you got into it, the fact that you were doing this work as a young person anyway, like a lot of young people do, odd jobs and so forth to make money. But what motivated you to turn this into a business?
Yeah, so I now, in retrospect, I thought this was a unique experience, but now in retrospect that I've talked to other entrepreneurs, I now know this is not unique. This is something that actually happens frequently. And it's when an idea keeps you up at night, right? When you're daydreaming about an idea, when you're, laying in bed and you're thinking about what it could be. And that's the reason why my girlfriend actually pushed me to do this, because I would always talk about this. So I would say my motivation was very intrinsic. It came from this, I guess it's this force that kept telling me like, this is something, there's something here, you need to explore this. And I guess I just felt the need that I needed to do something about it. Now that I've talked to fellow entrepreneurs, I understand this was not a unique experience. Many of them, they've gone through that same path where they knew a market very intimately. Maybe they had experienced the problem personally, or maybe they had seen that problem with family and friends. And they just could not stop thinking about a potential solution to that problem. So what motivated me to start ToDoolie was my personal experience. At 12, I started doing odd jobs for my neighbors. I continue to do this work, really up to even to now. Sometimes I'll go and do a ToDoolie job just because I think
What town was this? Where were you when you were doing it?
Grosse Pointe,
Okay.
Michigan.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So my motivation.
You got some
came from
neighbors with some
experience.
cash out there too. That's good.
Exactly. So, as a foreign kid in the States and neighbors who needed services, I just realized, what an opportunity here to make money.
Yeah. Yeah. So you've been at this for a while, and who would you say, or let's see, in terms of thinking about the customers, you talked about these students you work with being customers and these people who are getting the work done being, how would you characterize, first of all, the students that you're working with? What, how would you, what do you look for?
Yeah, so this has actually evolved from the time we started to the time to now. Originally, we thought we would be in the suburbs, and that's where most of our business would actually be. And that's not, it's not untrue now, but that's more true about the consumer. The supply actually comes from inner city Detroit. And this is because what we've learned is inner city kids work 2 times longer, 2 times harder, and make 2 times more revenue for us than suburban household kids. For a lot of people, this is obvious, right? They're hustlers. But, it's nice to be able to prove that to data. So what we've noticed is our ideal student helper is the helper that may not have the same social capital and opportunities that other fellow students have to get that first internship. So it's normally students that are looking for first work experience and don't want to work for McDonald's, want to build that resume, and want to transition into that future internship opportunity.
Okay. And then on the customer side, what do those customers look like? I'm
So,
sorry, they're both customers, but I mean,
Yeah.
the people receiving the services.
Yeah, they are. What we've seen is, I would say 2/3 of them are actually women in suburban households, ages 45 to 60. Within that range, I'd say the average is about 54, 55.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's mostly women, suburban women.
Okay. And so you touched on this briefly before, maybe before we were recording, but what are the main benefits you're bringing to each of these customer segments?
Yeah, so the value proposition for for the consumer side is there are some jobs, not all jobs, but there are some jobs that are too small for landscaping companies. Landscaping companies are expensive because they have overhead from payroll, from storage, equipment, etc. So there are some jobs that are too small for landscaping companies to do, but they're still too tedious for homeowners to do themselves.
Mm.
And this is because after a long week of work, the last thing a homeowner wants to do is get underneath and pull weeds. So these jobs include pulling weeds, raking leaves, cleaning the garage, setting down mulch. So we have been able to create a value add by providing a service that costs a third of the price of what it would cost to hire a landscaping company. So
Mhm.
it gives homeowners now an option to outsource work that they would have never outsourced in the past.
Mm.
So that's the biggest value prop for suburban households. But now for the students themselves is being able to work on a flexible schedule, meaning you can work when you want and for who you want. The autonomy is obviously huge as well, especially when you're going through finals or you just have a difficult week and you don't feel like working. And then, of course, the money too. You can work half the time and make 2 times more than your friend who's making minimum wage working at Subway.
Mhm.
We pay a minimum of $15 per hour. So
Mhm.
you can work 3 hours, you just made 45 bucks. And we have instant payout, which means as soon as you clock out, the money is in your account right away.
Mm.
So that's a huge value for the student side.
Mm. In terms of how this works, I have some curiosity about this. I actually
Mm-hmm.
went to the website this
Mm-hmm.
morning
Mm-hmm.
because I need some work done.
Yeah,
And basically, I had a person come a
yeah,
few weeks ago to do some weeding, some pretty
yeah,
intense weeding,
yeah.
and they didn't finish, and
Right.
then they went on to another job. So anyway, I said, you know
Mhm.
what, maybe I'll have to duly do this. And so I go on the website, and it wasn't clear
Yeah,
if you're, it talks about a helper,
yeah,
right, as opposed to a worker. So are these
yeah.
people doing the complete job? Can you just tell them go do this, or do you have to be there and provide them the wheelbarrow and the tools and this kind of thing?
That's an excellent question. We are not a landscaping company, so we are very, aggressively pushing that message that what we are is an extra helping hand.
Okay.
So, for example, there are people who need to replace their sprinkler system. We're not going to come in and replace your sprinkler system. However, if you have bad knees, you
Yeah.
can hire a student that can do the work while you direct them on how to do it.
Yeah.
We don't provide any tools. We don't provide any equipment. We simply send you able bodies and
Pair
you
of
direct them
hands.
on what to
Pair
do.
of hands.
Exactly.
Now, do these students specialize in different areas? Like, if I want somebody to come and detail my car, do you have people who are just good at detailing cars, or could it be anybody and they're just going to do what you direct them to do?
Not yet. So as we're building the marketplace, we're going to start adding more specialized skill sets and reviews and customer feedback. Right now, this sounds like an oxymoron, but we specialize in unskilled labor. So
Hmm.
it's jobs that you can actually do yourself. You don't
Yeah.
need special training to do, but you just either don't feel like doing, or maybe you need an additional hand. So we don't do specialized work. We don't do professional cleaning. We don't do professional moving. We don't do professional landscaping. We do unskilled work.
Yeah. Now, how do you vet these people?
Yeah, there are a few layers. So the first layer of vetting is where we actually recruit students. We normally do it in student centers or the student union, say in Ann Arbor at University of Michigan. So we'll set up a tabling event and we'll recruit from the students that are kind of in the area.
Mm.
So it's not a formal vetting process there, but just by being there, you're kind of targeting an already curated audience, people who
Hmm.
have gone through a background check, who have been accepted into college or university, it is very possible there's somebody who's not enrolled who just happens to be hanging out there who learns about us. That's fine too,
Mm-hmm.
because then the next layer is once they go through the application process, then we actually run a formal background check of that person. So
Mm-hmm.
we take their social security number, we get them set up with a bank account, a Stripe profile so they can get paid, and we also run a background check to make sure that they have a clean record. So there are layers. I'd say the first check is just where we recruit, and then the second check is the more formal background check that we run.
Mm-hmm. How do they get to the work site?
They are responsible to get themselves to that work site. That's why we recruit in various locations, because we want to make sure if we're doing jobs in Ann Arbor, we don't want people from, say, Dearborn driving to Ann Arbor. We'll much rather people from Canton at most go to the Ann Arbor jobs so that they can do that. One of the things we're very intentional about is recruiting and commuter campuses as much as possible. Wayne State is 80% commuter, which means if we recruit somebody at the student center at Wayne State during the day, it is very likely that student will go back home to their suburb, whether that's Sterling Heights, Novi, Grosse Pointe. And when a job is posted in their area, most likely it'll be someone who lives in the area who will take the job.
Mm-hmm. But what do you call these workers? Are they associates, or how do you refer to them in your business?
We call them student helpers.
Okay. Now, how many of them are there associated with the business right now?
We've had over 200, but I would say active is relative. Obviously, COVID-19 hit us really hard, and our business dropped about 80% in revenue and activity.
Wow.
Yeah, so we had, active in a month, I'd say probably the top was just like over 50. Now we're probably down to about 15 active students, and we're slowly ramping that back up.
Do you have an opportunity, just as an aside, to employ some of these people in COVID-related activities? Passing out PPE or helping with the testing or that sort of thing?
Not yet. We have done some COVID. We have explored some COVID-related opportunities. Back in April, we launched a bread delivery service where we would have homeowners who were at home bake fresh bread, and we would have our student helpers pick it up from their house and get it from their oven to the other person's house in 30 minutes or less. So they would get this bread still like warm, fresh out of the oven. Mm-hmm. So and that was really interesting to do, because people, like, there was a bread shortage when COVID first happened in the United States. Mm-hmm. So we did that. Now this month we're exploring a back to school tool to support public school districts with going back to school, and what you call these pandemic pods. So a pandemic pod is a group of parents with similarly aged kids, right, who decide to share the teaching responsibility of their children. Yeah. So we're exploring whether or not we could have recent college graduates act as sitters and facilitate online learning in person in a smaller environment. Yeah. It's not the core business model, but it's something we're passionate about, and we're trying to focus more on an equitable solution where it's a district-wide implementation as opposed to a direct-to-consumer where it's only available for those families who can afford it. Mm-hmm. So I'd say, to answer your question, directly, no. Our core business model is ToDoolie, but indirectly, we are exploring how we can be helpful, given everything that's going on.
All right. So it looks like, as a consumer, the main way I would sign up for the services on your website, are there any other, is there a number I can call or anything like that, or is it mainly just on the website?
There used to be. So one of the new KPIs or metrics we're measuring is the percentage of jobs that are done without human intervention, just because it helps us with scalability of the platform. Yeah. So last year we had a number right on the website that you could call and book a job. Yeah. Now we finished a mobile app for iOS and Android, and we have people book through the website or through the app and try to do it as streamlined as possible. Yeah. However, when you do book the job, like when the job is actually booked, you will have access to our phone line if you need to ask any questions. Yeah. And people do call us then, and then that number, technically it's the same number, so you could call us even if you don't have a job if you have the number.
Yeah.
but we're slowly pushing people more towards a streamlined solution.
So you're really trying to make it an Uber-like experience where you just pick up your
100%.
phone, say, I want somebody, and the person shows up.
That's the ultimate goal, correct?
And how do I pay for the service once it's done?
So when you book a student or multiple students, depending on the need that you have, you will be asked to put your credit card, basically same as Uber. You need to have credit card information on file to book a job.
Mm-hmm.
Once the job is completed, so students show up to your house, they clock in, you get a notification,
Yeah.
you give them directions, you tell them what you need done. Once they clock out, the time that they've been working, we do have a 2-hour minimum,
Yeah.
but the time they've been working is charged by the minute to your credit card.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the model, and it just happens instantly. So it's not, there's no manual process required. It's just like Uber.
So it's just like Uber. Okay.
Yeah.
What portions of the charged amount goes to the student helper? What portion goes to the platform?
It's right now it's about a 75 to 25% split, meaning we pay helpers $15 per hour. We keep $5 per hour, so we charge $20 per hour. But that it varies depending on a few other factors. We're actually pushing an update by the end of this year that would allow levels, meaning helpers would start at level 1 and they can level up to level 10, and they can earn as much as $17 per hour depending on the level. But I'd say the average right now is we take a 25% commission on every job.
And going with the Uber model, so these student helpers would see the availability of an opportunity and they can just select that themselves, or is there some intervention on the platform end where you all are assigning people to jobs?
Yeah, it's a combination. So right now it's first come, first serve. So you find the job, you like the job, you pick the job. However, because we're a startup, if there's a job that has specific criteria, we will nudge specific students that we think would be a better fit. The goal is to actually code ourselves out of a job. So what we just spend time doing, we can actually make code do that. So we have decided on developing an algorithm that we call smart matching that takes into account location, availability, something we call the confidence score, which is the likelihood of that student showing up on time, but then also performance reviews. So it'll take into account all those variables, and it's still going to be first come, first serve, but the students that we believe are most fit for the job will get a notification first. So they'll have first dibs.
So you really want this to be scalable from the standpoint that it's the platform that's doing all of this work and it doesn't require human intervention.
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay. That certainly helps for scalability.
Yeah.
And so, again, revenue streams, sounds like the main revenue stream is the fee that you get for people doing these jobs, right? And,
yeah,
your portion of that.
That's correct.
Are there any other revenue streams associated with the business?
Yeah, so before we had a mobile app, so last year in 2019, when we first launched, we had an MVP. Our minimum viable product was a Squarespace website and a type form. And in order to collect credit card information, we actually had to charge your card. So we would charge people a $5 booking fee. So it was just a small fee just to get their card on file. Now that we built an app and it's more of an Uber-like experience, we don't have to do that. I believe we might still have a small operational fee to cover the insurance because we're bonded and insured. So we might have that we tack on at the end, sort of like how Uber has additional fees that they don't tell you about. It's kind of like that, but it's not a material revenue stream for us. It's insignificant in compared to the real revenue, because the average job for us is about $140 top line revenue or $45 in net revenue after our helpers are paid. And if you tack on $5 on top of that, you can see that $5 is really not that much compared to the real revenue.
Okay. What do your costs look like?
So obviously the labor, paying the helpers. We currently have 6 people who are full-time employees and 3 part-time interns. We currently have a burn rate of about $32,000 a month. So that 90% of that is headcount and benefits, right? Like medical insurance, like that type of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Everything we do in-house. So there's not a lot of third-party expenses other than some subscriptions like our Zoom membership, our website hosting. So it's not a lot. It's very minimal stuff. Most of our expenses are based on headcount.
Mm-hmm. And so I'm assuming with the whole COVID thing and with the reduction in business that, and you have 6 full-time people, I'm assuming you're not making money right now.
Not a lot. I mean, we've never been profitable, but we have been cash flow positive. So last year, what I mean by cash flow positive is good to differentiate the two. It means our revenues were not enough to pay for our expenses, but the revenue we made in a job was significantly higher than the cost to acquire that client. So for example, we would spend anywhere from $13 to $22 to acquire a client, and we would net $45. So, with that business model, we could do that all day, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
money in, money out. What has changed with COVID-19 is that people are more afraid to book services. So the customer acquisition cost has gone up. So now we don't have that same cash flow positive model. It's a temporary thing, and people are slowly getting more comfortable outsourcing work.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's the biggest thing.
So how do you go about getting these student helpers on the platform? How do you go about getting the consumers on the platform?
Yeah. So we are a hyper-local marketplace, which means all of our recruiting and marketing is hyper-local. So unlike most other startups who do Facebook ads, Google ads, we actually don't really rely on that type of marketing. We use Facebook for clients to determine where the clients are. So we'll do landing pages and we'll run some experiments, and we'll get name, address, and email, and that's it. And then we'll put those people in a map. And then based on that map, we'll actually post a job on our platform for doorknob flyers or door hangers. And we'll pay our helpers to go put doorknob hangers in that entire neighborhood. So that's the marketing strategy there. That's how we're able to do it so cheap compared to, say, TaskRabbit or some of these other gig economy marketplaces who do mostly digital acquisition. And then obviously word of mouth is a huge driver for additional clients. For students, tabling events on college campuses. We'll also make some online postings on platforms like Handshakes or similar platforms. But tabling events are for sure the way to go. We'll actually hire student ambassadors to put in a ToDoolie t-shirt, get in a table on the campus. We have a big banner, and then like the banner says $15 an hour. So that's enough. That's enough to get people to like gravitate to the table.
Yeah. Okay. And again, notwithstanding the COVID, what's your strategy for growth?
Yeah.
Growth in customers, growth in helpers.
So marketplaces thrive on network effects. And there's this idea of what you call a steady state. And a steady state is when the revenues of that market are enough to sustain the market, meaning to pay for the employees and pay for the additional marketing to keep that market going at a steady state. So the strategy for growth is super simple. We need to get one market to a steady state. And in order to do that, we actually have to spend a lot of capital in a short amount of time. But doing that requires a lot of strategic thinking, because doing that in the winter is a bad idea. Doing that in the spring is the best idea, because you're going to get the best return on investment acquiring clients. And you want to acquire as many as possible, as fast as possible, so that there's value in the marketplace. Because if you went on the Uber app and there were no drivers around, you would probably never go on it again. It's just it's a useless app without network effects. So the goal was, and is now for next year, but the goal was to launch in Atlanta middle of March, and and build liquidity in Atlanta. What ended up happening was middle of March, you know what happened middle of March. So we had to cancel our Atlanta launch and postponed it to March of 2021. So we'll actually be doing that March of 2021. meaning we're not focusing on growth. For this quarter, we're focusing more on getting a nicer website. You saw our website still looks like a startup. We're working on finishing that up by the end of the year, and the second version will look like a company that has raised venture capital. So that's the goal for that. So we're doing a lot of cleanup. We're rebranding, new image, and also building additional technology to support the scale. Remember, I mentioned I want to streamline as much as possible, and I want to code ourselves out of a job. So even though we have apps now, the apps are not they're not perfect. So we want to continue to add more algorithms to facilitate a streamlined job booking.
Yeah.
And coming March, April 2021, then we'll drop the marketing dollars into Atlanta and grow from there.
Yeah. So the other thing that I see in the platform or in the app that's maybe a little different from Uber, makes it a little bit of a barrier, is that because of the nature of the job, you're requiring more information. So I got to go in and describe the work and what tools are available, this kind of thing. And it just create, so if I want an Uber ride, I just push the button, right? And somebody shows up. And so I don't know if there's any way around that, or maybe people can just say what they're looking for, into the app, and it interprets all that.
Yeah, it's really just an evolution. So Uber can take you from your house to the airport in 2 clicks, right?
Yeah.
That was not the first year Uber launched. So for us, what we've realized is we needed to have a mobile app because we wanted people to have profiles. There's no reason why you should be submitting that information more than once. If you're using the website, like I don't know a lot of people that book a ride on uber.com. Most people use the mobile app and they have a profile. Their payment information is on file. So the mobile app is supposed to help with that. But then also we believe, and this may or may not be kind of a pointy belief, but we believe that people are willing to sacrifice privacy over convenience, which means once we have a student come to your house and do a job, that student could leave notes on the job that they did. So when you hire another student, they would know what to do. Or maybe it's a picture of the job that they did, or maybe you organize your garage and you like it a specific way and you take a picture of the final end result. So next time you hire that same job, there's a lot less explaining and a lot less direction. And you simply just own that information as part of your ToDoolie profile. So we're still, evolving that thought, but the goal ultimately is to be as easy and frictionless as Uber is.
Now, something else I was wondering as I looked at the app, what would preclude me? I got a student that comes out and does some good work. I'm sure you've heard this question before. Yeah. Why don't I just call him on the side, get his phone number and have him come and avoid this extra money that I'm paying to ToDoolie?
Yeah, so there's the right now answer and there's the end of the year answer. So the right now answer is it does happen. People do call students. And what we've noticed is because our student helpers are not on ToDoolie to make a living, to pay for rent, to pay for utilities, they actually don't want to disintermediate. So going around the platform, the term venture capital is used as intermediation. So we've actually had students tell on homeowners and say, hey, so-and-so homeowner is trying to go around the platform, because students actually feel uncomfortable because they don't want to have that personal relationship. They want easy money and they don't want commitment.
Yeah.
So that's what's different between, say, us and a platform where it's adults doing this like a professional cleaning service. They're doing this week to week. They would rather have consistency. Our students are not looking for consistency. So that's the biggest difference. Now, the end of the year answer is the levels that I described. So we're gamifying the platform. So every time you complete a job as a student, you earn experience points and you level up. So by staying within platform, you are rewarding yourself and increasing your hourly rate in every other job that you do. So that prevents disintermediation.
Okay. So what proportion of your customers so far have been repeat customers in terms of consumers, repeat versus new?
Yeah, so we haven't been doing this for a long time in terms of steady service because we did a proof of concept and now we got hit by COVID. But the biggest pilot we ran was 8 months, and in 8 months, the average client booked 2.1 times.
Mm.
So we predict that we could see a lifetime value of 5 to 6 jobs per client, in a matter of like 2 to 3 years. So I would say the goal right now for us is to get a repeat usage of 20% within 60 days. I think right now we're at around 12%, maybe a little bit closer to 15%, but the goal would be to get 20% within 60 days.
Mm. I imagine that would depend on the job too. Like
Yeah,
if I had a student, if I had a good experience with
yeah,
this helper coming and washing my car,
right,
I don't want to get down on my knees and scrub the
right.
tires and all this kind of stuff. I don't want to wash the windshield. It's a little tough for me.
Yeah,
But if I could rely on that, hey, I'd have them come like once a month.
yeah.
You know.
Yeah, and it depends. You're right. It depends on the job. So, for example, there are jobs that are smaller and make us less revenue, but are more frequent, like pulling weeds, car cleanup, raking leaves. There are jobs that are bigger but less frequent, like setting down mulch. That
Mm.
job might take 3 students for 6 hours, and that would be a big payout for us. But that happens once a year or once every
Couple
two
times a
years.
year. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it just depends on the job.
Hmm. Okay. So, what are, in terms of you and your team,
Yeah.
what are the main activities you guys have to engage in on day-to-day business to ensure success, to deliver on this business model?
Yeah. So um, there's a lot of experimentation. So obviously marketing is a big one, making sure that our acquisition channels are being iterated on. So we have a very experimental culture. We actually, in order to do that, you have to be okay with failure. So we are okay running 10 experiments and failing 9 if we find one that seems like a promising acquisition channel. So one of the key activities is experimentation with acquisition channels. Another key activity is, depending on the time of the year, is obviously fundraising, right? I have 2 jobs as a CEO: keep money in the bank and then attract and retain great talent. So as a CEO, sometimes I'm raising money, sometimes I'm not. But obviously, being a manager is a big part of the key activities that we do. Delegating. Also, as a business, key activities as a business, it's educating. So providing resources and tools for our student helpers to understand the
Mm.
tax ramifications of being an independent contractor on our platform, to understand how to leverage their experience at ToDoolie to find that next internship or that next job. So we take a big, we personally feel very strongly about educating our labor and supply force.
Hmm.
So I'd say those are the key activities, probably just like fundraising, marketing, and educating our supply.
Hmm. Now, you mentioned there were 6 full-time employees. What are the activity areas for each of those people?
Yeah. So attract, retain great talent, be a
Yeah.
manager, raise money. My co-founder Armando, he loves the jobs to be done framework. So he sort of lands more in the UX, customer interview, customer discovery space,
Hmm.
and also tech. He's also a developer,
Hmm.
and translating that insight into a backlog for our development team to actually work on.
Hmm.
Jose is the student recruitment person. He's the one who manages student ambassadors, sets tabling events.
Hmm.
Like he manages everything that's student recruitment.
Yeah.
Hugh, who's our full stack developer, he is now our VP of technology. He manages our backend developer, but he also is the one who owns the backlog. He determines what gets built, what doesn't get built, and you could think of him like a product manager. He makes sure
Hmm.
product is built and built on time.
Hmm.
And Dan, who is one of our newest hires, is the backend developer. He ensures we have a strong foundation to build, the infrastructure of our platform on. He does everything that you don't see, but that you have to do. And then the other person that I failed to mention earlier is Mark. He's our VP of operations. Really, his biggest role is more on the finance side, make sure that our budget is good, that is strategically designed, and that we don't overspend. He also makes sure that we have systems in place or guardrails so that our company is running smoothly and efficiently.
Hmm. So what would you say right now, are the key resources that you folks have in the company?
Venture capital funding. So capital is a good resource.
Who,
Uh,
who funded you so far?
we have a handful of institutional investors and angel investors. So we've raised about $1 million in funding from people in San Francisco, New York, Michigan, and angel investors are a little bit more distributed: Seattle, San Francisco, Michigan as well, Chicago. So yeah, it's a mix.
Yeah. So what are you at? You've done a Series A, or is all this seed funding so far?
Interestingly enough, so things have changed in the last 15 years. This was our pre-seed round. So
Okay.
we still haven't done the seed.
Wow.
Yeah, so rounds are getting bigger and
Yeah.
more expensive. So that's our pre-seed round. Some people call it seed. It just depends. It's a pre-seed in San Francisco. It's a seed in Michigan. Depends
Yeah.
where you are.
Yeah.
For us, it's just money to
Could
operate.
be a Series A in Michigan.
Yeah, yeah, of course. But yeah,
What are the terms of that money, basically? Convertible
yeah,
debt.
we raised on a SAFE, which is a simple agreement for future equity, which is, you could think of it as a convertible note, but it's not a debt instrument. A convertible note is debt. This is not debt. This is it's a note that converts into equity at the future round. And there's a cap. So we raised at a $4 million cap with a 20% discount, but it's not debt. So that's the difference between a SAFE and a convertible note.
Okay. And you've raised a total of roughly $1 million so far.
Yeah, a little bit under, but I say a million. It's just easier.
In terms of intellectual property, that sort of thing, what key resources would you cite there?
Yeah, so we have some IP. The IP is mostly on the proprietary algorithms and things that you don't actually see. So I spoke about something that we haven't launched yet that we're building in-house called smart matching. And that relies heavily on a mathematical model we put together called the confidence score. And you could think of that as a credit score. Like when you have a credit score, it's this complex algorithm that determines what your credit score is. We have something similar to basically predict the confidence of attendance of each helper. It's called the confidence score. No one has this in the gig economy at the level that we do. So it's unique and it's something we consider IP. Also, the gamification, the levels for students, we haven't built that yet, but it's in the roadmap. That would also be a very unique feature that we would have. I wouldn't call that as defensible as the confidence score, because that one you do see and it could potentially be replicated, but we would still be first to market with that innovation.
Mm-hmm.
So it's defensible and timing, probably not defensible and people being able to replicate it. And other than that, it's just the unique insight that I have, right? I have been doing this since I was 12 years old. Good luck finding somebody with my same profile who went to school, got a technical degree, understands mathematics, calculus, differential equations, and rake leaves for 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
So that's probably a competitive advantage that we have over all of our competitors.
So it sounds like your strategy is for this platform to be a key competitive weapon. But also the relationships that you've built with these students. That student marketplace is a kind of a unique opportunity and a unique marketing approach.
Yeah, so that's a competitive advantage in terms of a new space. So the gig economy was pioneered by TaskRabbit in 2008. And since then, we've seen Airbnb, Uber, Lyft, Grubhub, DoorDash, and many others. What we have not seen is a gig economy platform that injects student labor into the gig economy. So we are not the only ones. There are many others. There's actually one that started in 2006 called Sweeps, and they are out of the Carolinas. They actually have not grown since the beginning. They've grown very steady, but they took a different approach. They took the no raising venture capital, growing organically year over year approach. We think VC funding or the VC route is the way to go to get to many places faster and to leverage the technology that we have. So we're very tech heavy. So yeah, it's unique to bring students into the gig economy. we're not the only ones doing it, but I would say, a year, 2 years from now, we might be the biggest ones doing it.
Hmm. So you mentioned TaskRabbit. What's the key point or points of differentiation between ToDoolie and TaskRabbit?
Yeah, so TaskRabbit has been a great example of what the gig economy, promised. So TaskRabbit in the early days, in 2008 to 2012, was everything. You needed a ride to the airport, TaskRabbit. You needed food delivery, TaskRabbit. This was not just really ambitious and great in the early days, but it was also the reason why they were acqui-hired by IKEA and ultimately were not what you would call a win in the venture capital world. Because what happened was Uber realized people would much rather get to the airport in 2 clicks than have to fill out a form and provide a bunch of details. So they realized that segmenting the gig economy was a better go-to-market strategy than trying to do everything. So that's the biggest difference. We are vertical specific. We specialize in unskilled labor and yard work. We are not trying to do everything. We're a very specialized service because we believe that is the way to go. It's also worth mentioning that the CEO of TaskRabbit, Stacy Brown Philpott, is one of our advisors. So we have been able to talk to the leadership at TaskRabbit to identify, where their failures were, how can we prevent those, and how can we move faster and not make the mistakes that they had to make in the early days. And then also the student labor angle is a big differentiation as well. TaskRabbit does not work with students; they work with 21 and older.
Okay. Now you mentioned that there are other outfits out there like Sweeps that are focused on the students as the associates. So how would you mentioned how you differentiate from Sweeps mainly from a financial strategy standpoint, but who are some of the others? How do you see the playing field relative to those?
Yes, this is a super interesting space. You're seeing so many. I think ultimately it's gonna come down to go-to-market strategy. You're seeing a lot of different players. So, for example, down in where is this? I think in Virginia, there's a company called Rent Sons. So you can rent a son hourly, and they are taking a franchising model approach where you start a chapter. And that's sort of like college painters. That's the model they're taking. And they do everything, right? We don't do everything. They'll do any job. They actually have different pricing for different jobs. Our pricing is the same always. And they will provide tools. So they add that onto their services. We think that's too complex to scale. So that's but because they're doing the franchising approach, it's a little bit easier because it's not their responsibility to figure out how to scale it. They're letting whoever owns kind of that chapter figure it out. Still cool. I'm not against it. I just think the franchising model is dead because we have so many software as a service platforms that you can leverage now. So that's Rent Sons. There's another one called Papa. Papa is headquartered in Miami, and they provide just elder assistance. So it's mostly for people to hire young students to help their older parents who are at home and need help with like putting a light bulb, or they just need company, or need help being driven to the grocery store to buy groceries. So they are taking the venture capital route. They went through the Y Combinator Accelerator 2 years ago. And I think they just did their Series A. They did a $10 million Series A. So they are, very close to our space, but they're focusing more on elder care. We're focusing more on yard work and outdoor services. So that's the biggest differentiator there. And there are a few others. There's one called Juggle out of Columbus, Ohio, I believe. And they're probably closest geographically to us. And they only do babysitting. So they're strictly a student babysitting service, a 2.5.
Okay.
So there are a few. I think that there's more than we think. So however many we think there are, multiply that by 5, and that's probably how many there actually are. But most of them are local. They're kind of incognito or have not raised venture capital.
Okay. So I didn't touch on this before, but what are some of the key partnerships? You mentioned Stripe and things like that, but what partnerships help you get this thing done?
Yeah, so obviously the biggest partnerships are our stakeholders, our investors, right? They invested not just their money, their capital, but they also invested their Rolodex. So we can get warm introductions to almost anyone that we want because we got awesome investors and people who are supporting us. So that's a strategic partnership right there. Other than that, universities. Wayne State University was our first investor. They invested $75,000 in us through a safe. So that's a strategic partnership right there. We work, very closely with Wayne. We do our tabling events there. It's our first market. It's where we proved our model. And we, I think in the long run or the long term, Wayne State will prove to be a strategic partner in potentially getting us to other universities. So that's another strategic partner. And then we haven't established these partnerships yet. These are more aspirational targets for partnerships. But would love to establish a partnership with Lyft so that we can provide mobility access to some of those inner city kids who want to work but don't have a car. So we want to explore that a little bit better. And then also neighborhood organizations. There are a lot of neighborhood clubs, neighborhood organizations where suburban households kind of meet and decide on services they want to use. We also think there's opportunity there for partnership.
So as a homeowner, going back to my experience with the website, again, there are a couple of concerns that I would have. I'm sure they're the same ones you've heard about before.
Yeah.
One would be just security, safety. You're bringing somebody into your home or even into your yard that you don't know what their background is directly. And the other is what if one of these kids gets hurt? They're doing some weed trimming and they chop their finger off or something like that.
Yeah.
So how do you address those things?
Good point. So by the very nature of our model, most of our demand comes from suburbs. So just from a statistics standpoint, there's lower crime and there's the safer areas where we're sending our youth to actually go do work. But on top of that, we are running every single client through the sexual predators list. So we ensure, that there's no red flags there. Our homeowners don't know we're doing it. It's free. It doesn't cost anything, but it's a check that we do every single time. From a liability standpoint, we are bonded and insured. So if we were to have an incident, say like somebody breaks something at your home, a student gets hurt, we are covered up to $2 million in property damages and up to $500,000 in physical injury. So we have insurance to cover, if the worst were to happen. We're pretty thankful that we have not had a single claim. I think this comes from the fact that we're not doing difficult tasks. We're doing unskilled work. So they're very simple. They're not high risk. But we do have insurance and we do run the proper checks to ensure that, the safety of everyone.
So if a student got hurt on my property, my insurance wouldn't be on the line. It would be ToDoolie's insurance.
Well, I'm not a lawyer, but I will tell you what a lawyer might say. But again, I'm not a lawyer. And I know this because a lawyer actually told me this. So they told me in the United States, you can sue anyone for anything.
Yeah.
So having insurance is good, but at the end of the day, you don't know how that person is going to respond to, an injury or an incident. And, lawyers or insurance providers, people will gravitate to where the money is, right? So if we are insured and we have our insurance policy, most likely we are going to absorb that cost and we take on that liability. But you never know if somebody might decide to not press charges, but I guess to file a claim against the homeowner. And it really depends on what on the context of the incident, right? Let's say that this person got hurt because the homeowner was careless or there was ill intent, or maybe had the student get in a ladder and it was just a shady situation, right? So it's not for us to determine who is at fault in that situation, but we do the most that we can do based on our business model, which is we are bonded, we're insured, we have protection against damage to property and against physical injury. But at the end of the day, like a lawyer would say, you can sue anyone for anything. So that's just the reality of it.
And what about fear that some of these suburban clients might have about the worker, the helper, stealing something from them, some valuable tool, or breaking into their house, or that sort of thing.
Yeah, not only has that never happened, we don't believe it will ever happen. We do background check every student, and they have to go through a survey, and we ensure that they have the right profile from a character standpoint. But what we have experienced is racism. So what we've noticed is when we send students of colors to suburban household, we actually have had some clients, show like a completely different behavior towards those students than previous students, where they've said, hey, why did you send me this person? I like the other person better. I don't feel safe having this person alone, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
When the only factor is that they're Black, right? So, that it sucks. We can't ignore that. It's a real thing, right? Like racism exists, it's real.
Yeah.
So whoever is saying it's not is wrong. It exists. We have data to support that it does.
You keep track of how much that happens?
Oh yeah. Fortunately, it doesn't happen a lot, but it does happen. And we are actually more worried about that than we are worried about our students stealing stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Now, you mentioned how COVID-19 affected the business, earlier, and I can understand how people are cautious about interacting with people they don't know and this sort of thing.
Especially young people.
Yeah. Now, flipping that around, it would be great. It would be impressive if you all could figure out a way within that to pivot and do something that employs these students in a way that addresses that COVID problem.
Absolutely, and that would be a great opportunity for a collaboration or partnership with your class, right? We're definitely thinking about how to provide more value during COVID. I mentioned this spot facilitation tech that we're building on the side. But even as a service, there are jobs that are, COVID valuable things that could be done right now.
Yeah.
We're keeping an open mind, and we're keeping a watch on those opportunities.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I was going to ask you, what areas of the business model you might like to have the students look at, and they'll certainly approach that with you as well. Yeah. So one other thing I'm kind of asking all of the interviewees in these sessions is, we've seen the whole, all the protests, the Black Lives Matter situation, all these, the civil unrest that we're seeing across the country. How has that affected the business so far, and what challenges do you perceive potentially from that?
Yeah, I don't believe our business has been affected by this, but I personally have. I'm not Black, but I am a person of color. And we have data within our business to show that systematic racism is real, right? It's not a made up thing. I wouldn't say that our business has been affected from a revenue standpoint from what's going on. But I would say that my team as individuals, we have been affected. We have discussions about this internally, and we just try to be aware that these problems exist. But yeah, the business itself has not been affected by these issues, fortunately.
Okay. So what are your greatest concerns about the business at this time, aside from the COVID situation?
Well, aside from the COVID. So we have selected KPIs, key performance indicators, that we want to meet by the end of the year. So we have from now to December 31st to get all of those to be green. And then the reason we want to do that is because without getting those to be good enough, it's just difficult to scale this platform, because then we would just be scaling all of the inefficiencies with it as well. So I think the biggest challenge is being clever enough to figure out how to get all of our KPIs to look the way we want them to by the end of the year.
And that's a concern. You're concerned about being able to achieve that?
Yeah, of course. I think, my biggest concern is execution, right? Everyone can have ideas. Some people can make a plan. Not a lot of people can execute. So execution is always a concern for me, and ensuring that we speak through actions and not just words.
Okay. So on the other hand, if everything goes the way you hope and dream about for this business, what do you see in a few years' time, 5 to 10 years?
If we meet all of our KPIs by the end of the year, I think we I think my second worry would have been raising venture capital for the next round. But if we meet our KPIs, I think that would be a breeze. And I could see a significant amount of growth in 2021, depending on how COVID is doing for our business. If not, 2022 could be a very good year for us. I'm talking about at least 10x in revenue and just like presence.
Mm-hmm. So if you want to be able to look back in 10 years and say, this business did everything I hoped it would do, what would that be?
Yeah, so our vision is to be the largest service provider for student labor in the United States.
Okay. So you want to be everywhere, basically.
Absolutely, yes.
All the campuses, kind of like
Everywhere.
Facebook, kind of like Facebook was.
Yeah.
So is there anything about the business that I haven't touched on, or any additional information you want to provide?
So I'd say we got a pretty good idea of the business, but I think one thing that I just want to highlight again, I mentioned this at the beginning, but is our mission. We're a mission-driven company. There's nothing that we do that is not mission focused or mission centered. So again, we have a dual mission, which is to provide professional development opportunities to young people, regardless of socioeconomic status and background. That's one part of our mission. The second part is to bring neighborhoods' needs and essential needs and services online in a cost-effective way. So everything that we do, whether it's COVID focus, whether it's ToDoolie, odd jobs, whatever it is, it must fall in line with that mission. So I know some people in your class might be interested in potentially partnering with us. It's very important that they know that the mission is at the forefront of whatever decisions we make.
Yeah. Well, that's great. I'm glad that you emphasize that, because that is one of the things that tends to distinguish these urban focused businesses. It's not necessarily that you're serving urban customers, but inherent in that is you're trying to achieve some result for those customers. You still want to be profitable. You still want to be scalable,
absolutely,
right?
Yeah.
But you want to achieve some result for the people you're working for. So I'm glad to hear that, because it's totally consistent with what we're trying to do in the course. So
Awesome.
I appreciate you taking the time to do this, and also the time that you're going to devote to working with the students. It's probably about 15 to 20 hours over the course of the fall, and that's no insignificant amount for a CEO who's trying to build a business. So really appreciate it. I hope we can create some value in both directions out of this.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, thank you for the opportunity as well.
All right, Sergio. Well, it's good to see you again.
Yeah, good to see you too.
All right. Things have really come along in the past few years.
Absolutely.
All right. You take care.
Yeah, you too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.